You don't enter, you are admitted. Your name is irrelevant. Your story? Even less. You are destitute. A number. A burden that needs to be scrubbed clean, not with soap, but with discipline. The iron gate creaks like a sentence being passed. Beyond it, a block of soot-colored bricks rises like a warning. Inside, even time feels punished. This is Victorian England, and you've just chosen to trade starvation in the streets for institutional humiliation. A poor bargain. Too late now. They're already processing you. Men go one way, women another. Children, ripped from their mothers like poverty spreads through skin contact. You smell it before you see it. A mix of cheap disinfectant, wet stone, and bodies too tired or too forbidden to rest. The light is minimal. The stairs are blank. The footsteps choreographed by necessity, not purpose. The master of the house sizes you up with eyes trained to feel nothing. You're not a soul. You're an expense, a potential thief, a slacker in need of salvation. And then begins the ritual of stripping. Remove your clothes. Leave everything, even the hole-ridden shoes. In here, everyone wears the same shame. The uniform scratches like regret, a shapeless sack of rough cotton in a color that hovers somewhere between dust and despair. You don't wear it for warmth, you wear it to disappear. On the wall, a sign reads, "He who does not work shall not eat." That's when it sinks in. This isn't shelter, it's reprogramming by suffering. The system doesn't believe you're poor by misfortune, it believes you're poor by choice, and it will make sure you regret that choice with every fiber of your uniform. Night falls, not gently, but like a wet sack thrown over your head. There is no pillow, no blanket, just a slab of wood or a canvas cot, depending on the workhouse's generosity or its budget, which are the same thing here. The room is a tomb of silence, broken only by the chorus of coughs and shifting limbs. No talking after dark, no whispering. Breathing too loudly, borderline rebellion. You lie there in your uniform, that itchy prison of cloth, trying not to think about the cold that bites your toes and climbs up your spine like a hungry rat. There is no warmth, not from the walls, not from your neighbors, not even from your own body, which has learned not to waste heat on hope. And yet, sleep comes, not as a comfort, but as a shutdown, a factory light going dark until the bell rings again. Because it will, at 5 a.m. sharp. That bell isn't a wake-up call, it's a declaration of war on your muscles, your joints, your very idea of time. You rise not because you're ready, but because not rising means punishment. Bread removed, tasks multiplied, solitude extended. Then begins the parade of tasks. Stone breaking, bone grinding, picking apart old rope into fibers, scrubbing the already scrubbed, doing nothing that matters for as long as it takes to feel it does. You don't work for purpose, you work for correction, for the sheer moral arithmetic that says suffering, redemption, and all of it is measured, timed, checked. You don't choose when to eat or what. You don't choose when to rest or how. Even misery has a schedule here. Breakfast arrives with the subtlety of a prison sentence. It's not served, it's allocated. A scoop, a ladle, a grayish lump in a dented tin bowl. You sit in a long, echoing hall that smells like boiled things and resignation. Rows of hunched figures chew in silence, their eyes focused on nothing, their jaws moving not from hunger, but obligation. What's on the menu? It depends on the century, the funding, and how much the overseer believes in divine punishment. But today you get gruel. And not the romanticized Dickensian version. No, This is reality's porridge. A tepid, grainy liquid that tastes like boiled wallpaper and regret. No sugar, no spice. Just oats that died in vain and water that never aspired to be broth. Chewing is optional, gagging isn't. Occasionally there's bread. Calling it bread is generous. It's more like a medieval building material, gray, dry, and capable of minor blunt force trauma. It arrives in slabs, each piece as joyless as the next. It's hard on your teeth, assuming you still have them. And if you're lucky, if the gods of indigence smile upon you, there's something protein adjacent. A sliver of cheese that tastes like it once knew a cow, or a piece of meat so dry it could survive a siege. But mostly, it's repetition. Gruel in the morning, gruel at night. A routine so nutritionally hollow it barely sustains your bones, but just enough to keep your hands working. Because that's the point, isn't it? To keep you just alive enough to earn your right to keep suffering. You eat with others, but there's no conversation, no laughter, no table etiquette, just metal scraping metal, and the occasional cough that sounds like it came from someone who's half ghost already. There is no dignity in this nourishment, no warmth, only the slow, calculated erosion of taste and spirit. And if someone dares to complain, they're reminded, by voice or fist or cold removal of the already pathetic portions, that this isn't charity. It's moral reform. You are not being fed, you are being managed. And when the meal is over, you don't linger. You rise in formation, scrape your tin bowl clean, because leaving food is ingratitude, and you march back into the schedule. Full? Never. Nourished? Hardly. Shamed into compliance? Perfectly. Sharp, metallic, absolute. It doesn't ask, it commands. The day stretches before you like a stone road, long, gray, and built to break you. First rule of the Victorian Workhouse: the task must never be useful. It must not produce anything of value, because then you'd have purpose. And purpose is dangerously close to hope. Instead, you're assigned labor that mocks you. Stone breaking. You sit in a yard, a hammer in hand, smashing rocks into smaller rocks. Not for construction, but because it's hard, repetitive, and utterly degrading. Rope picking. You take old ship ropes, crusted with salt and thyme, and tear them apart fiber by fiber. It blisters your fingers, stiffens your back, and accomplishes almost nothing. Some call it oakum picking. You call it a slow grind into madness. Laundry. You scrub clothes that aren't yours, with water that burns your skin from cold or chemicals, or both. You squeeze, wring, hang, again, and again, and again, until your hands forget they ever did anything else. And in between, silence, no music, no conversation, just breath, labor, and the quiet ticking of a system that has no mercy, no variance, no room for deviation. Supervisors walk the floor like priests in a temple, only instead of offering absolution, they offer suspicion. They measure your output. They time your breaks. They correct your posture with sharp commands, or occasionally a cane. The message is clear. Idleness is sin. Rest is temptation. Pain is proof of moral progress. You don't build a future here. You don't learn a trade. You simply atone, hour by hour, muscle by muscle, for the crime of being alive without wealth. Your body becomes a schedule, your soul a liability, and time a loop you can't escape. No matter how fast you work, the work does not end. Because it's not about getting it done. It's about making sure you never believe you deserve to stop. You are not a worker. You are a warning. They don't cry. Not often. Not loudly. Not because they're brave, but because even tears feel like a luxury here. Children in the workhouse are not children, they're units, small, fragile extensions of adult shame. When you arrive, they are taken from you. No hugs, no long goodbyes, just a hand pulling them away while another hands you your uniform. Boys go to one wing, girls to another. Infants, they vanish into the nursery ward, if it can even be called that. A gray room with rows of cribs and too few arms to comfort them. Older children are expected to earn their keep. At 6 years old, they're already workers in training. By 10, full-time laborers. By 12, some look 40, eyes sunken, backs bent, dreams amputated. Their tasks mirror the adults, rope picking with bloody fingers, laundry tubs taller than they are, carrying coal up slippery stone steps that seem designed to make them fall. There's schooling, technically, a classroom, a Bible, a stick. Lessons are short and brutal, mostly rote memorization, recited like factory chants. Thou shalt not steal. Blessed are the poor. Obey those in authority. Writing, arithmetic, only enough to keep the books balanced, not enough to spark imagination. Play is discouraged. Laughter, rare. Games, non-existent. A child who smiles too much is watched. A child who speaks out is punished. Some wet the bed. Some stop speaking. Some rock themselves to sleep like they're trying to remember what comfort once felt like. They are not raised, they are processed. Sometimes siblings catch glimpses of each other across courtyards, a glance, a half wave, a ghost of recognition. Then the moment passes, swallowed by routine. Some never leave the system. They grow up, age out, and are reassigned, from child ward to labor ward to burial plot. And yet, sometimes they sing, softly, in whispers, old lullabies from the outside world, melodies carried by memory, floating through iron bars and cold hallways like defiance. Not hope, exactly, but a refusal to forget they were once something else. There is a rule for everything, a rule for when to rise, a rule for how to stand, a rule for the correct angle to hold your spoon. And if the rules seem arbitrary, that's because they are. Obedience here is not a path to freedom, it's the destination itself. The workhouse runs like a monastery without mercy, not a place of peace, but of performance. Every action is surveillance, every breath an opportunity to displease. Inspectors roam the halls like moral auditors. They don't look at you, they assess. Your uniform, clean, your hair, tidy, your posture, upright enough to prove you're still beatable. They check beds for tight corners, chambers for forbidden items, like notes or crumbs, or the sin of personal comfort. Toothbrushes don't exist, but God forbid your collar is wrinkled. Infractions range from talking during meals to smiling without cause. And the punishments are never creative, only cruel in their dull repetition. Isolation, food reduction, extra labor, public shaming, because what better motivator than despair with an audience? Every week, there's chapel, a forced march to salvation. You sit on hard pews with harder faces beside you, listening to sermons that sound less like comfort and more like financial advice for the soul. Poverty is divine discipline. Suffering purifies the idle heart. God helps those who help themselves, which is convenient for those already helped. Prayer is scheduled. Silence is mandatory. Repentance is assumed. You kneel not out of faith, but because the floor is watching. And even heaven feels like an extension of the rules, cold, structured, conditional. No one is allowed to think their way out, to question, to imagine. Even dreams must comply with regulation. The workhouse doesn't just feed and house you, it reshapes you into silence, into obedience, into something that won't ask why. And if you follow every rule, if you scrub the floor of your soul clean enough, you are not rewarded. You are simply less punished. It starts with a cough, not yours, someone else's, across the room, hollow, wet, and far too persistent to be ignored. Then another, and another. Within days, the air feels heavier, moist with breath, with spores, with things you cannot name but feel settling on your skin like invisible rot. Welcome to the infirmary, a room that smells like boiled linen, urine, and slow decay. A place where people go not to heal, but to linger. Beds are lined up wall to wall, no space between them. No privacy, no quiet, just rows of bodies trying not to be next. There are doctors occasionally, men in stiff coats who appear once a week, maybe. But mostly, it's the nurses, underpaid, overworked, and often as sick as their patients. You don't call for help, you wait for help to notice you. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Fevers burn unchecked. Rashes spread like gossip. Wounds fester in corners of the room where light dares not reach. Tuberculosis is common. They call it consumption because it consumes you. Your weight, your strength, your voice. You cough until blood comes up like confession. And still, no isolation. You're just moved closer to the end of the row. The worst part isn't the dying. It's the smell of the dying. It clings to the walls, to the sheets, to your own breath as you try not to inhale too deeply. A blend of sweat, mildew, spoiled broth, and something sour that no one names out loud. And when death finally arrives, it comes quietly. No mourning, no procession, just a cart, a shroud, and lime, white powder thrown over the body like bureaucratic closure. If you're lucky, someone will remember your name. If not, your existence folds neatly into a ledger. Dead, removed, space cleared. The system doesn't grieve. It adjusts. And the living? They look away. Because to look is to acknowledge it could be you next. And in the workhouse, death isn't a tragedy. It's just another part of the routine. Not allowed, of course. That would be insubordination. But late at night, under the straw-thin blanket of regulated sleep, the idea creeps in like a draft. What if I just walked out? But escape isn't a door. It's a calculation. Because technically, yes, you can leave the workhouse. But where will you go? Who will feed you? What will you wear now that your old clothes were burned or sold? Outside, the streets are no friendlier than the stone corridors inside. It's mud, soot, the stink of coal, and eyes that look through you like poverty is contagious. No job, no references, no place to sleep. Being poor in the workhouse is shameful. Being poor outside is criminal. So you stay. But the fantasy persists, evolving, distorting. You imagine running to the countryside, to a ship, to America maybe, a place you've never seen but have been promised in whispers, like a secular heaven where people start over and eat meat every day. You imagine stealing bread just to feel full, or taking a blanket and hiding in a church pew until the priest forgets to kick you out. Some do leave. Some vanish into the city fog, become chimney sweeps, beggars, thieves. Some come back, broken, frostbitten, hollow-eyed and thinner than before. Some don't come back at all, but even that has its own logic. Better to freeze in the alley than rot in routine. Better to be free and starving than fed and erased. You don't tell the staff about these thoughts. You smile, you work, you keep your spoon steady, because the workhouse doesn't punish escape. It punishes the desire to escape. And so you learn to hide that too, to bury your rebellion deep under the layers of obedience. like a secret ember in a fireplace that no longer burns, but still remembers what fire once felt like. They didn't whip you. They didn't slap you, usually. They didn't even raise their voices much, because to them, the administrators, the inspectors, the guardians of the poor, this wasn't cruelty. It was order. It was duty. It was, in their own words, charity with discipline. These were men in waistcoats and clean boots, with pocket watches and opinions sharpened by ledgers. They sat in high-ceilinged rooms that smelled of pipe smoke and ink, drafting policies over tea. To them, the workhouse wasn't a punishment. It was a mirror, a place where the idle would finally confront the consequences of their sloth, where vice would be starved out of the bloodstream by bland food and routine. Many were God-fearing. They believed deeply, terrifyingly, that poverty was moral failure, and that by enforcing labor, silence, and humility, they were offering the poor a path to redemption. Some even visited, walked the halls, watched the lines of workers, and nodded approvingly at the sound of silence. They saw the rules as salvation, the beds as safety, the gruel as grace. Because what's more merciful, they'd ask, than giving the unworthy a second chance to prove they could be different? They believed in the moral calculus. If a man worked, he was redeemable. If he starved, he had chosen pride over humility. Women were watched even closer. Pregnancy out of wedlock, proof of sin, too pretty, temptation incarnate, too old, useless. They called themselves guardians, not of the poor, but of virtue, and in a way that made them more dangerous than any whip or cane, because they could sleep at night, they could kiss their children, they could pray with clean consciences, because in their minds, the suffering they administered wasn't cruelty, it was medicine. And if you died under their care, you died improved. There is no farewell ceremony, no handshake, no thank you for your service to the system that drained you. One day, they call your name, if they remember it. You're handed your discharge paper, a parcel of donated clothes, 3 sizes wrong, and the equivalent of good luck, said with eyes that mean, please don't come back. You step out the same gate you entered, but you are not the same. Your skin is thinner, your voice smaller. Your shoulders know how to stoop even when you try to stand tall. Some try to find work. Some go to the slums and vanish. Some wander. Some return, ashamed, starving, skeletal, because the outside world doesn't want you either. You are marked, not visibly, but with a smell of desperation people learn to detect. You thought the workhouse broke your body, but it broke something quieter. Your sense of time, your sense of being worth anything not measured in output. For years afterward, you may still rise at 5 a.m., still eat too quickly, still flinch when someone speaks loudly, and sometimes, lying awake on a thin mattress in a cheap room, you remember the silence, not peace, not comfort, but controlled stillness. And for one cursed moment, you miss it. Because at least in there, your misery had a schedule. Out here, it's chaos. Out here, you must pretend to want things again. But, and here's the twist the Guardians never expected, some do rebuild. Some learn to laugh again. Some carry the trauma like a relic, but also like proof that they survived, not because the system worked, but in spite of it. And that, in the end, is the only redemption this story offers, not for the institution, but for the soul that refused to vanish. So next time you complain about the waiting room at the DMV, remember, no one's taking your shoes, measuring your breath, or punishing your hunger with prayer. You're free, and freedom, even when uncertain, imperfect, cold, still tastes better than gruel.